The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining the podcast, the live podcast today. The topic of today is, improved guest satisfaction with improved air quality, and we're going to be hosted by Glenn Colarossi, who's also on the line. Afternoon, Glenn.
Afternoon, Mike.
So, thanks everyone for taking the time to join. I appreciate that everyone's time is valuable. So we're going to use around about 30 minutes today, really focusing on the topic of how indoor air quality can help improve guest satisfaction. I'm going to hand over to Glenn in a second, but I just wanted to introduce Glenn as our host today. Glenn is a very prominent and well-known industry expert when it comes to the subject of wellness and fitness. He's got over 25 years of experience, and really over that time he's managed to build a who's who in quality of a client list. Some of the organizations that I'm sure you'll all recognize that he's worked with include the Four Seasons, St. Regis, WCI, Luxury Collection, the Plaza Hotel, just to name a few. He's also served in numerous roles, either owner or operator of several prestigious health clubs and spas, and he's also managed global hospitality sales for a couple of organizations that you'll know, Cybex International and True Fitness. As well as his commercial background and influence, he's also served as an advisory board member on several health and fitness related councils and institutions. So a very credible and relevant industry expert to be hosting our conversations today. He's going to be grilling me and preventing this from just being all about AeraMax. We're going to get into some of the detail and explanations and justifications behind why we think this subject matter is an interesting one. My name's Mike Booth. I'm the Senior Global Marketing Manager here at AeraMax Professional. And on that, I'm going to hand over to Glenn.
Thanks, Mike, for that wonderful and very generous introduction. And thanks to everyone for joining us today for this live discussion. As per the invitation you all received, there are a few topics we want to cover, but this is by no means a one-way presentation. I'll be quizzing Mike on why this is a relevant subject matter for our industry, but we'll also leave time towards the end for you to ask questions. You can save these questions for the end or add them as we go along using the Q&A section within the panel to the right of your screen. If you can all just take a moment, look to the right of the screen, you can type your message into the chat and we'll see them on our end and I can address them to Mike as well. We're going to cover a lot in the time that we've allotted, and the main topics will be, as you can see on the screen now, how simple steps to improve the health of the facility and the occupants, how improving your indoor air quality can improve your bottom line and guest satisfaction, understand what simple steps you can do to improve air quality in your facility. I'm going to start off with the first question. Well, actually, before we dive into hospitality and health clubs specifically, Mike, can you tell us a bit more about why we should even be thinking about air quality and explain what we mean by bad air quality?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. This is a subject that's really easy for all of us to ignore. And actually, before I got involved in this product area within Fellows as an organization, it was something that I knew very little about, rewind 5 or 6 years ago. So I think first of all, we all breathe. Every single one of us, every single one that's joining us today, we all, without really thinking about it or putting much effort or energy in, we're breathing constantly. And if we think about our day-to-day activity, we're spending around 90% of our time indoors nowadays, and typically we're also spending somewhere between 8 and 10 hours sharing that indoor time with other people, whether that's in a work environment, in an educational environment, or in a hospitality or fitness environment as well, which is a key part of people's day-to-day routines. So, and one of the things that is often a surprise to people is that indoor air can often be more polluted. It can be poorer in quality than outdoor air quality. And one of the drivers of this is just the way that we build our buildings nowadays and the way that we build our homes. The big focus is energy efficiency and green, and the result of that is our buildings don't do the breathing for us any longer. So we have to either help them along the way through mechanical means, so we're relying on mechanical systems to help our buildings breathe, or we can use simple ventilation tactics like opening a window, but depending on the time of year or human habit, climate, all those things, that doesn't always happen. So we want our buildings to be sealed because we want to make them nice and energy efficient, but that's had a real impact on the quality of the air that's going on within those buildings. The other factor is just the time that we spend indoors, which we've already mentioned, 90% of our time. So if we're spending more time indoors, then human activity is contributing to poor indoor air quality. And then the final element is some of the materials and substances we're using indoors. If you rewind 100 years ago, a typical home would have been built using around 55 different materials. Nowadays, fast forward 100 years, typically there's 55,000 different materials that are being used to construct a typical home. So the huge spectrum of materials and substances we're using is having a huge influence on substances that are making their way into our air. Gases coming off our furnishings, off of the substances we use to clean our homes and our facilities. So ultimately, all roads point to worse indoor air quality conditions. The final thing I'd say is just thinking about basic consumption things that we consume on a daily basis. Typically, we're meant to drink around 2.5 cups of water on a daily basis. We eat somewhere between 4.5 and 5 pounds of food on a daily basis. But if we think about those daily consumption habits in terms of air, we're breathing around 3,000 gallons of air every single day. And I have a cup of water right in front of me now. If it was dirty, I just wouldn't drink it because I can visibly see there's a problem, and I wouldn't be drinking the water. But if we think about that same psychological barrier in terms of air, it's just an invisible issue that's so easy to ignore. And the reality is that most people, unless you're in China or in Beijing or Delhi, looking at bad air quality outside, you're really not thinking about this as a subject matter. So hopefully that kind of touches on why we believe this is an interesting subject matter. The second thing you were asking about there, Glenn, was like what makes air go bad, right?
Right.
So typically we talk about 4 main factors that can trigger indoor air quality to go bad, and I'm going to pull up a slide that helps explain some of these things. So these are the 4 things that we typically talk about. So the first one is really down to that human activity that I mentioned, bacteria and viruses, substances that are being introduced into air quality through humans being present within an environment. The second one along here is allergens, so anything that can trigger some form of allergic reaction or asthmatic conditions worsening as well. So at certain times of year, this could be seasonal things, pollen, ragweed, those types of things. But there are really common indoor allergy triggers such as mold and dust mites that can occur all year round and can actually be more prominent in the colder months as opposed to this just being a spring summer concern. And I think that the allergy one is really an interesting one. It's a growing concern here in the United States. Around 1 in 5 people today suffer from some form of an allergy. And if you think about them being in an environment when they're breathing more, such as a fitness environment, coupled with the fact that you're going to get high levels of humidity in those types of environments as well, that second one alone can be a real concern. Third one, VOCs. So these are substances that are gases when at room temperature. So cigarette smoke, smog, cleaning supplies, things that can easily make their way or even be used within a fitness environment. And the final one, which is the most obvious and most detectable air quality concern, odors. This is often the most common complaint, and we'll talk a little bit more about odor later, I'm sure, given its importance in these types of environments. So that's really kind of what makes air go bad, really. Yep. I'd just like to, at this point, just touch on like what are some of the benefits that can be associated with this as well. And there's a couple of studies that relate to fitness that that I'd like to talk about a little bit later on if we get time. But as far as just the broad topic of indoor air quality is concerned, there's a couple of key studies that have been done in this that link improved indoor air quality with improvements such as concentration improvements, information retention improvements. So Harvard have done a couple of key studies on this. And then the World Green Buildings Council, they recently published a report which talked about productivity improvements linked with improved air quality of somewhere between 8 to 11%. Now, whilst that's not directly relevant to this type of environment, to a fitness environment within a hospitality site, it's just some of the evidence that's out there to say improved air quality is associated with clear human relatable benefits. And I think that's just a good foundation for us to start with as we go deeper into this topic.
Mike, let me jump in. It's, I know you mentioned it was 3,000 gallons of air a day, and that's on average. Obviously, those of us who exercise obviously consume a great deal more than that. And I think that's a good segue into, and you touched upon it briefly, but why is it so relevant for health clubs within a hotel to address this subject matter?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good one. And the, you talked about us breathing more when we're exercising. Typically, I think the stat is 4 times more. We breathe 4 times more whilst we're exercising. I'm probably somewhere like 8 to 10 times more. It depends how good you are at doing this, right? But that's
You're a heavy.
That's the typical stat, at least. So I think one of the things that we talk about, and I'll pull up a slide that'll help talk about this as well. But one of the things we talk about is this concept of a first impression. So before, specifically thinking about just a fitness environment, I think, the average consumer nowadays, when it comes to being a patron of a restaurant or a hotel or a fitness center or any of these types of environments, there's a big influence of hygiene and cleanliness really influencing their desire to want to be a repeat customer, their desire to write a good review, or even their desire negatively to write something negative or make a complaint. So there was a study done by P&G Professional about a year ago now that was basically diving into this. So the stat that we're looking at here is around 92% of consumers say that cleanliness is one of the most important things when they decide if they're going to be a repeat customer. And I think this nicely relates to a fitness environment, especially a fitness environment or a health center environment within a hospitality place, because this is not just a place where people are popping in for an hour to work out, but they're spending the night. This is meant to be a home away from home, and I think that's really something that people think about when they're spending time in these types of environments. And this research actually covered hotels, restaurants, offices that people were visiting. So it wasn't just about a corporate office environment. But then on the flip side of the negative side, one of the stats that came out of this was that 95% of consumers agree that cleanliness can elevate a good business to a great business. So people really have their impression boosted if they're in an environment that they perceive to be more clean or more hygienic. And then some of the other, I won't go through all the stats, but some of the other stats that came out of this research was linked specifically to environments like a bathroom, a restaurant environment, to the type of space where they're going to be sleeping. And I think this, nicely ties into the way people think about hospitality environments and then the fitness environment within the actual hospitality. In terms of how, why should people care? People who are joined today who are spending their time thinking about challenges within hospitality environments. Well, there was one really key study. I mentioned the Harvard studies, which are broadly touching on air quality, but there's one real key study which specifically ties to a fitness environment, gyms and those types of facilities. And this was it was a partnership between the University of Lisbon in Portugal and Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, where they basically did a ton of monitoring within fitness centers. And they covered studio environments, in classes, in busy classes, in quiet classes, the open fitness halls and kind of open gym rooms where all the cardio and free weight equipment is located, locker rooms, communal spaces, reception areas, but all focused on just health and fitness environments. And there were some really interesting results that came from this. I mean, in general, what they found was that there were high levels of airborne dust, high levels of formaldehyde, and high levels of carbon dioxide within multiple environments in these types of facilities. And this just wasn't in one or two gyms. They really took quite a broad sample of facilities when they did this testing. And what they found was that the concentration levels of these substances was generally higher than what's seen as acceptable standards for indoor air quality. And really today, I think it's important to call out, there's no clear standard or benchmark for air quality in gyms here in the United States. So we don't have legislation to tie this to, but when you look at World Health Organization or EPA or the well building standards, these levels were really going above what was seen as acceptable. And what they found is that these levels were really high during evening aerobics classes, where you had more people packed into a dense environment, a loss of dust being pumped up into the air, lots of fumes, and obviously heavy breathing, which led to high levels of carbon dioxide as well. So I think if you couple these increased levels, these high concentrations of some of these substances that are a concern, with the fact that people are breathing more, as we said, typically 4 times more whilst they're exercising, it's obvious to see why this could be a concern. Even a real basic comment that they mentioned in the write-up to the research was typically when you're exercising, you're doing most of your breathing through your mouth. So you actually bypass some of our natural filtration system through our nose that we'd normally do if we were breathing just in a more passive environment, as people will be doing right now. So yeah, hopefully that study just kind of brings to life the topic a little bit more of why this is a relevant subject matter for these types of environments.
Mike, it's funny. I mean, just to reiterate your point, I've been reading some research about the dangers or what everyone's watching closely, especially with the popularity of spinning and those small rooms with the density of people and the high CO2 in those rooms because of inefficient HVAC systems, which make people lazy, and there's some concerns with that. Not that air purification has to do with the CO2, it's more of a filtration system. But going back to your point about the dirty water in the glass, if you saw it, you wouldn't drink it. Obviously, we can't see the air. So with hoteliers and fitness owners, can this just be, is this an invisible expense with no visibility to the end customer?
Well, I mean, what we found is that just really basically, this is our solution at least is a visible solution. So you've got a nice looking product, but still a sizable machine attached to the wall. So that sparks a bit of curiosity and conversation. So there's simple ways that staff members and management can talk about that and make that visible to people who are spending time in those environments already, which I think is just good confirmation for those existing members and guests that the right things are being done. I think we encourage the use of signage as well on the machine or around the machine, or even on entrance doors within to the environments to talk about it. Just like it's funny, we think 10, 20 years ago people would refer to fully air conditioned as being a consumer benefit, as being a real perk. Now that's just a basic human expectation in the United States that an environment would be air conditioned. But there's no reason why that same approach can't be used in and around the actual center through signage. And then I think, thinking specifically about hospitality, there's great content often within the hotel room encouraging people to use the restaurant, to use this, to use that, and also on the website where this could be a promoted benefit, to actually use feel the benefit of pure air, enter a pure air zone whilst you're doing your workout. And I think that whole movement is going to help just raise the awareness of this as a subject matter.
Yeah, Mike, the pure air zone message I think is critical to promote, and it's on everyone's mind today. You mentioned signage and on the website. Do you have any additional approaches that can be taken by our audience in their facility to help improve indoor air quality?
Just say that again, sorry, Glenn.
You'd mentioned signage and website, promoting the quality air as an approach that they can take to improve indoor air quality. Are there any other approaches that you feel might be worthwhile to introduce to the audience today?
Sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah. The good guidance to really talk about here, and I'll there's a good slide which is this one. It's really EPA guidance, the Environmental Protection Agency guidance. So they really talk about three main approaches when it comes to trying to improve indoor air quality. So the first one is there are some substances that you just want to remove, and you really don't want to think about purification as a method. So things like if there's radon that's detectable or asbestos within the building, you just need to get that out. So there's really no alternative there. Ventilation is key, and you talked about increased levels of CO2. CO2 is not the be all and end all of air quality, but it's certainly a very good indicator. It can have a negative impact on people's concentration levels, on people's fatigue, all those types of things. But it's also a good indicator that the ventilation system is just not performing as it should be, which can then lead to other poor indoor air quality conditions. And then the final thing that the EPA talks about is purification, which I won't hide away from it, that this is really where our solution sits at the heart of this topic of purification. And this is really the way to remove germs, allergens, and odors, those types of things that can be in the air. And the real benefit here is you can place these solutions in the environment where it's needed most. This is designed to work in the environment where you install it. So it's not about covering every single cubic foot of the environment. It's really about putting the solution where maybe you have a problem you're trying to solve, or where you want to proactively avoid problems occurring in the future.
Mike, I think so many of them today really try to, well, let's say use fragrance as a solution rather than pure air. Can you address that? I mean, a lot of times you come in and there's a scent or a signature scent in the lobby, or you go into a bathroom and you hear those air fresheners constantly psh, psh, spraying every few seconds. Can you comment on that? Is that truly a solution?
Yeah, we see a lot of it. I mean, that's a huge market globally, fragrance. And I think it is very often seen in a washroom, bathroom type environment. It's a well accepted and high penetration restroom solution. And I think the logic is that if there's a nice fragrance, then this place is clean. It's the same reason we have fragrance in our washing detergent for our clothes, and I guess in a way it's the same reason why we put on cologne in the morning. But to use a bit of a comparison, we take a shower before we put on that fragrance, right? So the whole approach there is let's clean before we fragrance, and not just fragrance. I'm sure we don't just get up every day and add more and more fragrance to the issue. So as well as just routine cleaning that's going to be done by manual labor, by physical staff doing their job within an environment, we really see purification as something that can do that cleaning within those environments. Fragrance is really there in many situations to mask the issue rather than get to the problem of the issue. The other thing that we really need to bear in mind with fragrance is in an environment, in an occupied environment, especially a fitness environment where people are going to be breathing, you really don't want to consider fragrance in those situations, because what fragrance is actually doing is it's not just masking the issue, but it's introducing potentially harmful chemicals and volatile organic compounds that can actually make air quality worse. And it can lead to people, especially people who suffer from allergies and asthma, it can trigger conditions. So maybe in a locker room or in a restroom environment, if that's the approach that wants to be taken, then that's fine. That's a market that exists. We don't believe in it. We think air purification is the way to get to the root of the issue. But specifically in these environments where people are working out, you don't want to be thinking of fragrance. That's just not the logical approach. But good question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, great point. Great point. Obviously, there are multiple solutions in the market today focused on cleaning the air or purifying the air. What makes AeraMax unique?
We talk about four main advantages as a product solution. So we talk about smart, effective, integrated, and reliable. And there are some other benefits which are called out on this slide. So I'll just pull this up so people have got visibility of the solution and the range and those types of things. But let me just spend a bit of time talking through smart, effective, reliable, and integrated. So smart is really in the way that the sensors are working. So our units use a air quality sensor, a motion sensor, and a sound sensor, so that the units are able to automatically adjust their fan speed based on air quality and occupancy. So the logic would be in a fitness environment is if there's high occupancy, high noise and movement, then there's more chance of an air quality concern, so the unit will work harder during those periods. And also if it detects an air quality concern, it will work harder during those periods as well. In terms of energy efficiency, though, what that means is that if there is no occupancy, there's no movement, and there's no air quality concern, the units will automatically reduce their fan speed or even move to a standby mode. So there's really no need for them to be maintained or managed on a daily basis. It's really a set it and forget it. You leave it running 24/7, and it will optimize its performance based on what it detects within the environment at that point. So that's smart. Effective, I won't get too technical here, but we use a proven set of filters: carbon filter, HEPA filter, and ionization, really to remove odors without the use of chemicals. That's the carbon filter that's doing that. And then the HEPA filter enables us to talk about performances and efficiencies of 99.97% down to the size of 0.3 microns. So the HEPA filter is really the workhorse there of the effectiveness. And we've got solid certification to back up these things, even to the point where we have the units certified to remove 99.99% of the influenza virus from the air within a period of 35 minutes. So, a solid set of certifications to back up our performance. Integrated is really simple. These units are designed to be mounted on the wall. So within these types of environments where you've got lots of members of the public in and out, lots of members, maybe environments that aren't constantly staffed, where maybe theft or vandalism or accidental damage could be a concern, and the general public can't get to this unit to switch it off either. So it's up on the wall, out of the way, doing its thing, really not there to interfere with the general public. So that's the smart, effective, integrated. And then the final one is reliable. And we put on our larger units, we put a 5-year warranty on those. And on our smallest professional unit, we have a 3-year warranty. So really the fellow stamp of approval that this unit is going to do its thing for that warranty period and beyond. We see very little quality concerns with this, so we know that in these types of environments, reliability is really key. So
excellent.
That's really a summary of what we believe makes this different in the marketplace.
Perfect. Circling back and bringing this back into the fitness realm, what experience do you have in these type of environments that you'd like to share with the audience today?
Yeah, I was really hoping this was going to come up. So I wanted to talk about, we've got numerous environments where we've got these units installed, and the website AeraMaxPro.com has got a ton of case studies that I'd really recommend people take a look at. But this is one that I personally worked on, so I can talk about in a bit of detail. And this was a fitness environment within a hotel in the UK. The company is Village Hotel Group. And typically the fitness center is in the basement, right? So air quality can be a little bit more of a challenge if you're underground. It just kind of elevates the issue a little bit. But there was a specific issue in this environment related to odor. They were getting actual complaints from members, and it was basically a spin class followed directly by a Pilates class. So you had high intensity fitness, followed by more of a passive fitness class. So the complaints were coming from that second class. We came in, we did some air quality testing, which I'll show on screen in a second, and the feedback was great after we installed the unit in here. So there's a quote on screen from the center manager, the fitness center manager here, just saying that the odor issue was dramatically reduced and the environment felt better. They were getting members of the gym that were asking if something had been changed with the air conditioning. All the complaints went away. The central management team were much happier, and this then led to a much bigger discussion with the nationwide corporation about installations in other environments. So this is just one example where that installation was done, and the reason why I wanted to get to this one to talk about was we did some really interesting air quality testing for this one as well. So I'll try and simplify this as much as possible because we're running out of time here. But this is basically looking at 0.3 micron particles within a liter of air within the environment. And what you see here is high levels in a test that we did before the installation. And this was at 6:30 in the evening after that spin class was finishing. And we were seeing huge levels of 0.3 micron particles, around 54,000 particles per liter of air in our sampling that we took. So then we installed the units. We went back 8 weeks afterwards. It doesn't need that long to perform, but this was just the convenient time for us to get back in there. And what we actually found was that not only did we have a great picture, as the graph shows, of reductions throughout the whole day, nice and healthy levels of 0.3 micron particles being found in the air there, but specifically at that same time, on the same day of the week, that peak level of 0.3 micron particles was reduced significantly down to around about 15,000 particles in a liter of air. So a reduction in a real world environment of 72%, despite the high challenges and the influences coming from all the activity taking place within that environment. So hopefully this just brings it to life a little bit, and also just validates that what the unit was able to do in this specific situation.
That's fantastic. Michael, it's 1:32. I don't see any questions on the right hand of the panel. If anyone online right now has a question, if you wouldn't mind putting it in that panel where it says chat, we'd love to address them for you. But while we're waiting, is there any other thing you'd like to chat about? Maybe the filter life, or I think, is this more suitable in addition to, the locker rooms?
Yeah, locker rooms can be a good application environment as well. I think obviously we've done a lot of installations within restrooms across all types of industries. So any environment where you've got people showering, people introducing their own aerosols and sprays into the environment, then that can come with air quality concerns. So, and they're typically smaller situations as well. The one thing that you just want to avoid is it being in a wet room environment directly next to the showers. So typically we recommend the average humidity be no higher than 60%. But often we find, even if it's an open space with showers and changing areas located together, there's places to install these and locate these where you avoid those high humidity levels. So absolutely, that can be an installation point to consider.
Great. Well, I don't see any questions, but I'd like to end on one I'm sure that's on everyone's mind. Is this an expensive solution?
It really depends on the value you put on taking away some of the issues that this can help deal with. But for me, I think when it comes to the ROI of this, what value can you put on retaining a customer and having a high level of guest satisfaction when it comes to people spending time in these types of environments? And I think a lot of the research that we talked about at the front end that just highlights the importance of hygiene and cleanliness and how those perceptions influence people's desire to be a patron of an environment or a member of an environment like this. It's clear to see when we're talking about high 70, 80, 90% influence points that this is something that people really take seriously. And I think if we can translate that into a fitness environment, then that's a high value benefit. Couple that with the ability to just reduce complaints if there are specific complaints and there are specific challenges that our audience members are dealing with. I think that's a real viable investment for people to consider. In terms of the actual cost, typically these range from anywhere between $600–700 for a smaller unit up to $1,700–1,800 for a larger unit, which a large unit can cover a sizable spin studio environment, and that's a single unit with a 5-year warranty. The only cost on top of that is going to be an annual filter change. So, I would say a very cost-effective solution when comparing it to investments that have been made in other equipment within these types of environments. The other option we do have is kind of break it down into a more of a rental scheme as well. So if that's of interest to anyone on the call, then we'd be more than happy to discuss that a little bit further. So yeah, I think expense and value are interesting discussion topics, but I think we get very little pushback on the cost. Once people are bought into tackling air quality as part of a holistic approach to hygiene and cleaning, people tend to buy into this pretty quickly.
Mike, well done. I mean, you're obviously a wealth of knowledge on this subject matter and a great resource. I just want to tell the audience, if they have additional questions, feel free to go to the website, and on the right-hand corner, you'll see a contact us drop down or link, and you can submit your question there or reach out to either of us. And Mike, in closing, do you want to say anything to the audience? Again, I appreciate your time.
No, I mean, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining, and thank you as well, Glenn, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do some of the grilling there. You were nice. Thank you. I appreciate that. You're not giving me too much of a grilling, but no, I think hopefully it's been good information for everyone, and a great resource is the website aeramaxpro.com, which people can see on screen now. They can reach out to us through that. Also, feel free to ask any questions if you've got specific questions for Glenn regarding what he does. Then you can channel those questions through there, and we'll make sure they get through to Glenn as well. And then you're just finally going to say that people will be in touch. We'll make this available if you want to share the link of the recording of today's podcast with any colleagues or other industry peers. Then we'll be posting that out via social channels and also via email as well. So I think that's a good time for us to wrap up. Thank everyone for joining, and yeah, we look forward to speaking to you all soon.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn.
Bye-bye.